All right. Welcome to the Week 6 recap edition of the Lewis and Laraib podcast. I am your host, Lewis, and next to me is my co host, Laraib. Thank you for joining us on this Wednesday morning. Let's get straight into it. Week 6 was a crazy week. Lots of big upsets, lots of just nail biting games going down to the end. Laraib, take us through it.
Yeah, let me pull up our picks real quick. It was a tough week for us, by far the lowest we've ever scored.
Mm-hmm.
But New England, disappointing loss, even though they were projected to win, or the spread was minus 9.5 for them. Cleveland, my upset, couldn't get anything going against that steel curtain down in Pittsburgh. And then Buffalo, your upset, they also couldn't get any, or they just weren't that sharp on Monday night. So
Yeah, and some other games, Green Bay with a disappointing loss on the road, and then Los Angeles couldn't get it done on the road either. So a lot of these games where you even both picked the same team just came out short. And, if Indianapolis doesn't come up clutch and beat the Bengals, then we're looking at an even lower score. So it was definitely a tough week in terms of upsets, but we're starting to feel like we know a lot more about these teams going forward. So this is subject to change. If I had to get one pick back, though, I would have made my upset the San Francisco 49ers because I was thinking about it after the podcast. I didn't pull the trigger, though. Unfortunately, I kept it with Buffalo. So I won't sleep anymore, San Francisco. Just don't get blown out by Miami again, and we'll talk about picking you.
yeah, I should have just gone with Miami as my lock because Ryan Fitzpatrick, always gotta trust him. But so this
Always.
puts you up on me 2 wins now once again. So
Yep.
it's
Back
gonna be
on
another
top.
big week for me if I'm gonna want to come back. But let's move on to our overreaction segment, sponsored by nobody. But Lewis, why don't you start us off here with your first overreaction?
All right, so disappointing loss for the Green Bay Packers on Sunday against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think, Green Bay always sits on its laurels, never the big moves, just goes to the draft. But I think this is the year they realize the talent they have. They go out and overreaction. If they want to contend in the NFC, they need to make a huge trade before the deadline, and I'm looking at Mr. Julio Jones. What say you?
Yeah, so earlier report I saw this week that the Falcons are open to trading Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, trying to free up a little bit of cap space for their future and try to, start getting into that rebuilding phase. So I have to agree with you. The Green Bay Packers offense looked lackluster, even with Aaron Jones and Devontae Adams out there. They couldn't get anything going. But I think instead of trading for a wide receiver, they go out and they trade for offensive linemen. Maybe they get Alex Mack from the Falcons or someone else like that, because as we saw, Bakhtiari, he got injured, and Beluga, they're all banged up on that Green Bay offensive line. So I think they do go out and make a trade, but I think it's going to be either offensive lineman or someone to clean up that secondary just a little bit on the back end.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Offensive line depth, it's always a key for a winning franchise, but I'm just thinking of the offensive spectacle that would be on display. And they could also use some help on the defensive end. Ronald Jones abused them on Sunday, but really there's no big name defensive players out there, or not even just big names, but valuable pieces out there to really make a difference on the defensive side. But when you have a stud like Julio Jones who's available, pairing him with Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers, that offense just looks terrifying. I mean, you look at the game where Devontae Adams is just coming off injury and he's not looking like himself, drop balls, and the other receivers are just struggling to get open against not a great Tampa Bay secondary, forcing Aaron Rodgers to put it into small windows. And then against good defenses and good secondaries, these, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, other guys with just ridiculously long names for some reason, Aquarius St. Brown, they're going to struggle. But if you put Julio Jones and Devontae Adams, two top 5 receivers in the league, in the same offense, they're going to be scary. Add Aaron Jones into the mix, and some of these offensive linemen get healthy. Just purely as a football fan, I think we'd all love to see Julio in a Green Bay jersey. It would be scary, but it would be so much fun to watch.
Yeah, but I highly doubt something like that would ever happen. Like you're saying before we started, Packers normally don't go out and get these big name players or sign them to big contracts, or they usually go through the draft. And I bet they'll probably do it again this year. I mean, they wasted Aaron Rodgers' career, I think, so far, just because of how stubborn they've been throughout the years, not giving him any help. And then even this year, they didn't draft a wide receiver, and they instead they go with a quarterback. So I mean, this is
Well,
the Packers' way.
well, think about last offseason where they bring in Zadarius Smith, bring in Preston Smith. They got some O-line help, and they made some, bigger splashes than we're accustomed to on the defensive end, and it really helped them out last year, making them all the way to the NFC Championship. But you need to keep up the aggression. You can't just go through the draft. And I'm thinking about this year's draft and how they picked Jordan Love with the 24th pick, Justin Jefferson still on the board, and Chase Claypool still on the board. Are like imagine those two in that Green Bay offense. I know Aaron Rodgers might not like a rookie receiver as a first round draft pick, and it's usually a tough scenario. But you look at the impact both these receivers have had already on their teams, and it's massive. So think about that. But they picked Jordan Love, a guy who could not help this championship team this season besides holding a clipboard. And regardless of how valuable I think that is, that person will not be suiting up for you. So, the front office is in a pretty sketchy position right now. And if they keep losing games, that pick is just going to look worse and worse and worse when you see so many successful wide receivers, which was a position of need for Green Bay entering the draft, and they never addressed it. And you're looking at these offensive outputs in games where they're down and they need to throw it a lot, and they just don't have the talent on the outside to really get it done. Drops by Mercedes Lewis and drops by these receivers to where hey, Aaron Rodgers, can you just put on a show for us? Like, there's not much talent on the outside. So the front office feels the pressure from the fans. They bring in Julio Jones. Julio Jones lights it up, and we'll see you in the NFC Championship, Green Bay.
Yeah. So is that all you got to say about that?
That's all I got, Laraib.
All right, so let's move on to my first overreaction, and that is the New England Patriots miss the playoffs.
Talk
I
about it.
mean, coming off a terrible loss to the Broncos last week, their offense just couldn't get anything going. And you were talking about Julio Jones getting traded to the Packers. Maybe the Patriots go out in there and try to trade for a receiver because they looked abysmal out there against the Broncos. The Broncos, they've been able to keep a couple games close, only 2-point loss to the Titans and a 5-point loss to the Steelers, but then to the Buccaneers to lose by 18. So, I mean, if the Patriots, if they want to make the playoffs, you have to beat these, lower end teams like the Broncos. And then if you're playing in the AFC, you really have to, stay on your toes at all times because you see there's 10 teams, almost 10 teams in the AFC that can make the playoffs. So then, dropping a game and you're not going to win your division, I don't think against the Bills is looking very rough for the New England Patriots if they're going to want to make the playoffs.
Things do look bleak for the New England Patriots, but that is an overreaction. Their schedule going forward is one of the easier schedules in the league. They still face the Jets twice. Miami with a rookie quarterback is definitely a worse team, I would say, for right now versus if they had Fitzpatrick at the helm. It's just regardless of whether or not you want to win this season or you just want to get reps from your rookie quarterback, which I think we all want to see Tua in a Miami jersey. So very proud of him. But I think Bill Belichick against a rookie quarterback, that's going to be 2 wins, including already beating them in week 1. So there's definitely hope going forward. Their schedule going forward, they already played the Chiefs. So the remaining of the AFC West is not that bad. They do play the Titans, they play the Texans, which that could be an easy win. So you cannot write this team off just yet. I still think there's a lot of promise. Cam Newton coming off of coronavirus, who knows what really how much of a toll that took on his body and his practice plans. it's not like the Titans where you look at them and they're like, oh, well, they got affected and they're winning games. I think they didn't have their two best players go down with coronavirus. They had some solid starters, but not Derrick Henry, not Ryan Tannehill, no Jadeveon Clowney. So in the sense where it's like, okay, we're gonna take away your best defensive player, your best offensive player, and then you suddenly come back against a Broncos team who's getting their starting quarterback back. I just think it's really hitting that locker room right now, how they need to like prepare for COVID, and they still had guys missing. They didn't know when they were playing. Like we predicted this game twice because of how shaky the schedule was. So I'd say give the Patriots a pass for this one, even though we're not in the excuse making business, and you just you got to play football. And Cam Newton did struggle; he looked really bad. And is that a byproduct of COVID? Who knows? But he needs to get it fixed because there were so many passes where it was just like immediately out of his hand. You were like, that's not going anywhere. That's going out of bounds. Like he definitely needs to get chemistry with these receivers. And if, like you said, we were talking about Julio, bring him in with Cam Newton, get all those NFC South guys to the Patriots. I'm fine with that. But get him with Julio, that could be dangerous. So yeah, I think they still have a chance just because of that team and that coach and their preparedness. I think they come out next week with a vengeance. But no, I still think there's a chance.
Well, they do play the 49ers and the Bills in their next two games, so easily could be 2-5. And then they play the Jets, so that's an easy win. So you're 3-5, and then you have to play the Ravens, the Texans, and the Cardinals. The Ravens, we know who they are. They beat the Patriots last year with Tom Brady, so I mean, I'm expecting the same thing again this year. The Texans, sneakily, they played really well last week against the Titans. They went down early in the first half, but then in the second half, they were scoring a whole bunch. Deshaun Watson able to open up the passing game a little bit more with Brandon Cooks and Will Fuller. And then, interesting call to go for 2 rather than kick the extra point and go up by 8. And then the Cardinals, we saw what they did to the Cowboys on Monday Night Football. So, I mean, the Patriots, they have a couple tough games, and they're going to have to prove to, everyone if they're going to want to make the playoffs, especially, in this AFC, like I was saying earlier, because, I mean, if you lose, if you have 6 or 7 losses on the season, I don't think you're making the playoffs in the AFC.
Yeah, if they can somehow maintain 500 through that stretch, like you said, and just get through that part, which is probably the hardest part of their schedule moving forward, then I think they're solid. But like you said, if they fall to like 3-6, 3-7, you're not coming back from that in the AFC this year. The AFC is a whole different monster. You're not going to have a wild card team, even if a 7th spot is open. You're not going to have a wild card team with more than 6 losses. I mean, that's just how it's going to go. So they need to get their stuff together, get ready, and get ready for San Francisco next week. All right, so let's move on to my next overreaction. So next week, we're getting one of the better games, 2 undefeated teams clashing in a game that was postponed, the Titans against the Steelers. And my overreaction is we're going to see this game again this season in the AFC Championship. Both teams are undefeated. What say you?
Yeah, and in my current top 5 rankings, I have these as the number 1 and 2, or the number 1 and number 3 teams. But we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But I have to agree, the Steelers, I mean, they look like a complete team, a complete offensive and defensive juggernaut against the Browns. But, we keep on saying, like, oh, they haven't really proved themselves. But they proved it on Sunday against the Browns team that was looking like it was kind of on a hot streak. But, we saw what their defense could do. They got pressure. They didn't let up that many points. And then the offensive side, we were complaining about Ben Roethlisberger not being able to hit the deep ball. But it doesn't look like he needs to do that with James Conner running it on the ground. And then if you have playmakers in, Juju Smith-Schuster and Chase Claypool, and then they get Deontay Johnson back this week. So looking like a complete team with that offensive line. And then we know TJ Watt, he's going to be going for Defensive Player of the Year this year. So they look like a great team. And then on the other side, the Titans, a little bit surprising how close that game was. But it is a divisional game. Those games can be a little more closer than expected. But Derrick Henry looked great. And you really see how Mike Vrabel is using the play-action game if you have 8 people stacked in the box trying to stop Derrick Henry, you just hit a play action. The linebackers are too close to the line, and you get you get AJ Brown, Jonnu Smith deep in that secondary, hit him a nice crossing route. So looking like both of these teams they clearly have a lead in the AFC right now.
Yeah, and this is why this is my favorite for the AFC Championship, because everything you said I completely agree with. But then looking forward, think about winter time, right? What wins you games in the playoffs and what is the winning strategy? It's experience at quarterback, which both teams have, a strong running game, which the Steelers are really starting to find their rhythm offensively with the running game. And I think for the Steelers, the trenches, their defensive front seven and their offensive line are just probably two of the best units in football. And they're just constantly going at each other, getting reps. Iron sharpens iron on that side of the ball. So it's looking like a huge advantage for them in every situation. Meanwhile, the Titans, their offensive line, they lose Taylor Lewan, unfortunately, to an ACL tear, which could be huge for them moving forward. All pro tackle right there. But they still have such a good unit up front. And when you have a beast of a man in Derrick Henry just running through folks, over 200 rushing yards yesterday for the Titans, it's you literally have the playoff player who got them to the AFC Championship last year. So we know they have the experience. We know he is perfectly capable of doing so. So if these teams match up, and we're going to see on Sunday, we'll get to that game tomorrow in our predictions podcast, but just the battle of the trenches is going to be so great, and it's going to come down to these quarterbacks making the big throws whenever they can. The biggest thing that gives me pause on the Titans side is, we saw this yesterday as well. They're still not getting a lot of pressure on the quarterback. Deshaun Watson, who has been one of the most sacked quarterbacks, was basically clean yesterday. He got sacked twice, but it was more just like
that's a good game for him if he's only getting sacked twice.
Yeah, Deshaun Watson getting sacked twice is a good clean day for him. He does it to himself a lot of the time, but that's a whole different topic. I think with the secondary still needs to get together. It was a short week, granted, coming off a big Tuesday night win against the Bills, and it's a divisional opponent. But this is a Texans team which does not have a lot of talent. There were 2 turnovers by Tennessee in this game that really let Houston come back into it. But I think it just speaks to Mike Vrabel and this unit of how they've really come through adversity with all the COVID stuff going on, and they're only going to get better once guys are starting to come back, and a lot of this blows through their facility. So they're definitely starting to seem like a team that's getting all their stuff together, and they're looking to make a huge run this season. So I like my AFC Championship pick.
Yeah, for sure. We're definitely going to see a big matchup this week. We'll talk about that later on. But whoever wins that game, they're going to have a very nice, they're going to have a nice lead on the AFC, along with, a first-round bye maybe to go into the playoffs. So we'll definitely see. But both these teams looking like, they're dominating the AFC right now. But moving on to our final overreaction, my overreaction is going to be the Los Angeles Rams are frauds, okay? They have 4 wins, but guess who those 4 wins have been against? The NFC least. And even some of those games against the Cowboys, you only win by 3. Against the Giants, you only win by 8. So none of these victories looking like looking like they were supposed to dominate anyone. And then the 2, above 500 teams that they lose to in the Bills and the 49ers. Granted, they come back a little bit against the Bills, and then they lose that one late. But against the 49ers, Jimmy Garoppolo looking like his former self once again. So these Rams looking like frauds to me, Lewis. What do you think?
I have to agree with you, Laraib. There's nothing there to really give me any evidence that I can believe in this team. It seems like Aaron Donald in these big games against these good offensive lines just kind of gets stymied. He's still an impact player, but I've always said against good rushing teams, the 49ers or the Rams are going to get gashed. And as we saw against the 49ers, on that big play that could potentially give that could give the Rams the ball back after they just scored a touchdown in the fourth quarter. And it's, can you stop Deebo Samuel here? And you could, they'll punt the ball back and you can stop the clock. Aaron Donald just runs right by him. He doesn't even try to get back and stop Deebo Samuel on 3rd and 8, and they get 11 yards on the play, and that's ball game. I mean, this team has always been poor against the run. I think just their over pursuit and gaps is what really kills them. They try to go for the big, splashy defensive plays. They're way too aggressive up front, and that's going to hurt them against the good rushing teams, a Tampa, a Green Bay, and even in their division, Seattle and San Francisco. It's going to hurt them straight up. And now they play the hardest part of their schedule. They have to play the Seahawks twice. They just lost to the 49ers, and they lost against the Bills. So their losses, like you said, their wins are not too impressive because they barely beat the Giants, who have just been getting slaughtered, except against the Washington football team. And then, even in that Bills game, it looks close. They came back down 28-3. And if it wasn't for, maybe they could pull out of that game, but they still lost. So they were getting dominated, and then Buffalo kind of took their foot off the gas, whatever you want to say. Maybe Los Angeles figured them out. But, I mean, I really have pause for this team. I still think they're looking like a playoff team, but I need to see them face some of these upper echelon teams in the league if I'm going to anoint them with anything.
Yeah, definitely. And they play the Bears Monday night, and, Bears fans, I ask for your forgiveness. I said the second worst 4-1 team in the league, but a great win against the Carolina Panthers to put y'all up 5-1 and on top of the NFC North. And I asked for.
Laraib, do you have numbers on what they rank as 5-1 team? Are they the worst 5-1 team of all time? Is that even possible?
I'll have to get back to you on that one, but Bears fans, I'm sorry, we're calling y'all out. But hopefully y'all can go out there, y'all can shut the Rams down and show us why you're the greatest 6-1 team of all time.
The worst 15-1 team of all time.
No, but again, back to the Rams. They do play the Bears, and then they have the Dolphins. It's going to be an easy win against Tua. But then they have the Seahawks, Buccaneers, 49ers, Cardinals, and Patriots. So looking at that tough stretch of games, if we're seeing how they're playing and they lose to every team that's above 500, they very well could go 4 and whatever in that stretch against those, above average teams. So the Rams definitely, they're going to have to prove themselves to me if they're going to want to win this NFC division or even make the playoffs.
Well, they really need to get a proving ground. I think this offensive line has struggled in the running game. They have some splash plays, but I just feel like there's still a disconnect offensively. Like there's no rhythm there. I mean, ever since losing Todd Gurley, I don't think it's viable running back by committee. None of these running backs can really get a rhythm. Darrell Henderson had a few big runs against the 49ers, but nothing that was really too impactful. It was all, before the 50-yard line. So you're not really doing much for your team in terms of getting too much field position. But, I mean, Jared Goff needs to play a lot better. The receivers, Cooper Kupp had a few drop passes, and they need to get him more involved in the offense because he's one of their best playmakers. But they need to figure a lot out. Sean McVay has a lot of those played going up against a stout defense in the Chicago Bears on Monday night, but we'll get to that tomorrow. Rams starting to look like frauds. It's going to be a tough stretch for you. Got to figure it out.
Yep, definitely.
Anything more on that, Laraib?
No, Jared Goff, he missed a couple throws as well. So he's going to have to tighten up a little bit if he's going to want to, take this team somewhere in the playoffs.
All right. So here's a segment that we did a little bit once before, but it's going to be called This or That. And here's how it's going to work. We're going to have a quarterback or any position, and I'm going to ask you, would you rather take for a game this player to be your starting whatever position, just on whatever team? Would you rather have this or that? So the quarterback in question we have today is one Teddy Two Gloves, Teddy Bridgewater, a fan favorite of the show. We love him. love to support him. We love his career, but we have to be objective about this. So, Laraib, I'm going to give you quarterbacks, and you have to tell me if you'd rather have Teddy or the field. You ready, Teddy? All
Yeah, let's
right.
go for it.
Teddy Bridgewater or Jared Goff?
I'm taking Teddy Bridgewater.
Really? Okay. I think I'd have I think I'd have Jared Goff. I think I trust his arm a bit more downfield, but that's a close one. That's a close
I
one.
just like Teddy Bridgewater just because he's a little bit more safer with the ball, and he can hit those medium to short throws, and he's not really off as much as I see Jared Goff was, or Jared Goff is.
Okay. Teddy Bridgewater or Justin Herbert?
For going forward or right now?
No, right now. So throw potential out. Well, so we're playing a game tomorrow.
You're
Who do you
throwing me
want
under
to
the bus, man.
tomorrow?
Against
It doesn't matter. It does not matter.
I'm taking Justin Herbert. I'm sorry. I am taking my
Right.
rookie of the year, Justin Herbert. I mean, talk about coming into the league as a rookie, not making too many mistakes and being able to stand tall in the pocket and just hit the deep ball, hit the short ball, hit your receivers no matter what's in your face, whatever's coming at you, to stand tall and just be out there and be a playmaker that can make a difference for your team. I have to take Justin Herbert.
So Teddy Bridgewater in his career has always won, right? He's a winning quarterback, has a winning record as a starter. Justin Herbert, do you know what his record is as a starter?
0-4.
0-4. And who's one of those losses to?
The Saints.
Teddy Bridgewater. I mean,
Oh
that's just
yeah, That was a what week? What was that? Week 3?
that was week 4. That was week.
Some early on in the season. Yeah, but
So I'm just saying we have proof. We have proof of one against the others. I like Teddy Bridgewater in the situation. I like the experience. He's a born winner. He does not make mistakes. Justin Herbert played a pretty clean game against the Saints, but there were some throws and pretty clutch moments where he just put it behind a guy and put it in harm's way. And you don't get that with Teddy Bridgewater. You don't get the explosiveness. You don't get the dynamic plays like you do from Herbert. But give me Teddy Two Gloves. Give me the steadiness. Give me the poise. And give me the dubs. So, next one, Teddy B or Derek Carr.
oh man, this is a tough one, but I'm going with Teddy Bridgewater. Derek Carr. Besides from against the Raiders, we never really see him throw it deep and down the field, and that's the same with Teddy Bridgewater. But Teddy Bridgewater, he protects the ball, he makes a safe play, so that's why I have to take Teddy Bridgewater instead of Derek Carr.
I mean, you have to wonder because you're seeing him with Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore this year, faster down the field threats. He's starting to push the ball a bit more than he did in New Orleans last season, but they didn't really have a speedy threat on the outside. Um, I'm going to take Teddy Bridgewater as well. I think it's a lot closer. I think Derek Carr just had the best game of his career last week. And if he can build on that, we can have an entirely new conversation because he has a lot of the same traits as Teddy Bridgewater. They just both need to really fit it into those tighter windows down the field a lot more and have more confidence in themselves and in their playmakers. But yeah, we both have Teddy B with the edge right there. All right, I'm going to give you 3 more. Let's get into one of the juicier ones. All right, Teddy Bridgewater or Nick Foles. The two
They
just
just
played.
played. They just played this week, and Nick Foles did win that game. But I'm going Teddy Bridgewater once again. It's a safe play. He's not gonna commit the turnovers like Nick Foles is. Even though Teddy Bridgewater, he did have 2 interceptions against the Bears defense, but a stout defense down there or up there in Chicago. But I would still take Teddy Bridgewater just because I trust him a lot more than Nick Foles, because Nick Foles, he can have that Super Bowl winning game against the Patriots, but then he'll come back and he'll throw some bad throws against really crappy defenses.
Yeah, give me it's tough. I gotta go. They're both winners, right? They both win at the highest levels. But who's won at the higher level? Give me Nick Foles.
We're talking about
Big
we're talking about right now, right? We're not talking about
right now. Talking about right now.
yeah. And you're taking Nick Foles.
What I've seen from Nick Foles in the biggest spots in the biggest games, and we're talking about just one game. You got to win it. Just the poise he has, and he always makes that play at the end of a game to get them a win. You can never bet against Nick Foles in the clutch. He willed that ball against the Bears 2 years ago for the double doink. We all knew it. It was all him. And then he won a Super Bowl, to which Teddy Bridgewater has never gotten towards. So give me Nick Foles. I like the
Hey, if
matchup.
Drew Brees could make it all the way to a Super Bowl, make it past the gosh darn Vikings, maybe Teddy Bridgewater could have a Super Bowl ring.
In 2009, he did make it past the Vikings and won the Super Bowl, but that's neither here nor there. Next matchup, which is going to be, I want to see what you think about this one. We have Teddy B or
Or
Carson
Drew
Wentz.
Brees.
Carson Wentz.
I am taking Carson Wentz.
Okay.
As much as people like to dog on Wentz, he has no supporting cast around him at all. I mean, Travis, you know who he's throwing to? He's throwing to Travis Fulgham and Greg Ward. No, Miles Sanders is out this week. Zach Ertz is out this week. Alshon Jeffrey's been gone all season. Sean Jackson's been gone most of the season. So, I mean, and, Lane Johnson's been banged up on the offensive line. So he has no help out there, and he's still, able to get it done just barely. I mean, it was a close game against the Ravens, and then he beats the 49ers on Sunday Night Football. So he's done it. I mean, he's been doing great with what he's had so far to work with.
As much as I've hated on Carson Wentz this year, I think I'm going to agree with you on this one. I think just pure talent. He's more talented than Bridgewater, and he has been dealt a raw hand this year. I think if it's the sense of you're paying a quarterback way too much money, and you're giving all of that money to him instead of other guys on the team. It's just one of those scenarios where if guys start to get injured because you have to have them under contract, or they're just young, unproven guys like a Travis Fulgham, a lot of those guys have gotten injured this, like their entire offensive line virtually. And I was so impressed last week how they, still fought to come back into that game against the Baltimore Ravens when they got a big lead. And usually when the Ravens get a lead, that's game over because you're not coming back. Their defense just is too good, and their offense will put you away and keep you off the field. But kudos to the Eagles for trying to go for it. Questionable decision by Doug Peterson with that 2-point call. Wasn't a fan, but, Carson Wentz as a quarterback, I still think he has a lot to prove. He is still mistake prone. Every single game he's thrown at least, he's coughed up the ball once, which is definitely a huge problem. But I think we're starting to move into more of the positives outweighing the negatives for his play. So a lot of things to look forward to for Philadelphia Eagles fans. But in this situation, I'm taking Carson Wentz over Teddy Bridgewater. Moving on, we got two more left. I think this is going to be easy, but we'll see what you think. Teddy Bridgewater or Baker Mayfield? What you got?
I'm taking Teddy Bridgewater. Baker Mayfield, he has not been that good throughout his NFL career. Ever since he had that, outstanding rookie performance his rookie year, he has not been that good. Turnovers after turnovers. And despite how many playmakers he has around him, complete opposite situation of what Carson Wentz has, right? 2 Pro Bowl wide receivers, 2 Pro Bowl running backs, a decent offensive line. He still he has turnovers, bad plays, he has everything to help him, but he still just can't get anything done. Against the Cowboys, the one outstanding victory that they had, they did it through the ground game, So, I'm taking Teddy Bridgewater in this one.
And you're looking at the Cowboys now, and you're wondering how great of a victory was it, Dak or no Dak? Yeah, I'm taking Teddy as well. Look, just for Teddy, he's lost a lot of guys in his career, and when we're looking this year, he lost Christian McCaffrey really early on in the season, and they could have easily said, that's our offense. We got to just, that's it. But then they beat the Cardinals, they beat the Chargers. They have a tough game against the Bears, in which they could have won if not given a few bad plays from Teddy. But I mean, that's a great defense on the other end. So kudos to the Bears. But you see, Baker Mayfield, he has all these outstanding weapons, which, it's just a gluttony of talent. And we look at guys like Carson Wentz, and it's like, imagine him in that offense. Like, are you kidding me? 2 Pro Bowl running backs, like you said, 2 Pro Bowl receivers, good offensive line, great tight ends. I mean, how much more do you need as a quarterback to still play awfully? Now, granted, against the Steelers, he had a hurt rib, and every single time he hit the ground, and he hit the ground a lot in this game, he came up slow, and maybe he was putting on a show for his Hulu sponsors, but I did not think he should have played this week. I think he should have probably held out against the Steelers team with that rib injury. But even earlier in the season, when he was perfectly healthy, they'd win some of these games, and then you'd be like, well, Baker didn't play well. Is he going to figure it out, or are we just going to continue him not being a great game manager? And it's starting to look like against these better teams, he can't. I mean, he in games that they need Baker to put up, points, it's really tough for him. He cannot hit throws, and the accuracy has not been a thing, which was one of his most exalted traits coming into the league from Oklahoma, was his accuracy and how accurate of a passer he was. And we just don't see that on the next level. He's not athletic for a quarterback who thinks he's athletic and tries to rely on his legs. He's starting to look like the guy from the Hulu commercial who stole his body, Regardless, he needs to play better if they want a chance of winning. But right now, I think it's obvious Teddy Bridgewater is the better quarterback.
Yep, definitely.
So next one, this will be our final one, Laraib. Teddy B versus Drew Brees. Who you got?
I am taking
right now.
I am taking Drew Brees. A lot of people dog on him as well, but Drew Brees, the GOAT of all GOATs, the greatest quarterback of all time. I'm taking Drew Brees. Questioning his arm strength, it has dwindled this year a little bit. The playmaking, decision-making has gone down just a little bit. But even with all that, I still think he's better than Teddy Bridgewater. And he's going to prove it this Sunday against the Panthers. But Drew Brees, he's gonna get Michael Thomas back this week, a little bit more familiarity. Not playing with his first-year receiver, Emmanuel Sanders only. So it's going to be Drew Brees. We're going to see the old Drew of old once again on Sunday. He's going to be back to his normal self with Michael Thomas, the slant king out there, along with, his new favorite target, Emmanuel Sanders. He had over 10 receptions against the Chargers, so it looks like they're building a little bit of rapport there. And then Jared Cook, he's been with the Saints for, a couple of years now. So to have all the pieces back together for Drew Brees once again, I think he'll be back to his normal, a little bit back to his normal self.
Yeah, let me take you to a nice history lesson. Last year, Drew Brees goes down against the Rams. Teddy comes in. It's a tough game. They're already down, and he loses. But he plays the next 5 games, Laura. What was Teddy Bridgewater's record in those 5 games?
5-0.
5-0 with basically the same Saints team. No Emmanuel Sanders as they have this year.
But he had Michael Thomas. He
had Michael Thomas. That is correct. And Alvin Kamara was injured for 2 of those games. So, but now we look at this year. No Christian McCaffrey. And, there's some change. Matt Rule, first-year head coach, definitely not, a Sean Payton-like coach, but he has been very impressive so far. Robbie Anderson
DJ
Moore are good receivers, but they're not Michael Thomas level. So I think I'm gonna be bold here. It's Drew Brees. Come on now. I'm not gonna oppose you like that. No, I like Teddy Bridgewater, but I think just experience, and if I need to win a game tomorrow, I need Drew Brees in that situation. He's seen every defense. He knows what to do. He doesn't make too many mistakes. I know it was a bad interception against the Chargers, but I saw a few pretty questionable plays from Teddy Bridgewater yesterday as well. That made me really scratch my head, or at least on Sunday. So he needs to fix a lot of those mistakes. Just playing through the offense, playing through Matt Rule. But as of right now, Teddy B is not as good as Drew Brees. But we will see going into the future what happens. And that will conclude our segment of this or that Teddy Bridgewater edition. Teddy Two Gloves, we love him. Move on. We'll give our top 5, and then we'll preview a Thursday night football matchup for the ages. So let's get into our top 5s, Laura. Give me your top 5. I'll give you my top 5. We'll compare, see what we have differently, and what could potentially change going into next week.
Yeah, so starting off my list, I have the Ravens at the 5 spot, the Chiefs at the 4, the Titans at the 3, Seahawks at the 2, and the Steelers as my number 1 team in the NFL.
All right. Well, for me, I have Ravens at my number 5 spot. I have Chiefs at my number 4 spot. I have the Steelers at my number 3 spot. I have the Seahawks at 2 and Titans at number 1. So we already got into the Titans versus Steelers debate. I think right now the Titans have a little bit more talent on the outside. Chase Claypool looks like a stud, though. Both the secondaries are shaky, but Malcolm Butler has experience. He had 2 big interceptions against Josh Allen. And they have some good safeties, Kenny Vaccaro and Kevin Byard in Tennessee, which, Minkah Fitzpatrick. So these teams are really good. And next week's game is going to be exciting. I think the one team in my top 5, which I think could really upgrade, is the Kansas City Chiefs. And we haven't talked about them much, but here's my thing. I talked about after their loss to the Raiders how their offense looked and how they should rebound. And they weren't getting the run involved too much. And they got away from their big short passing game, which was so creative. You got Travis Kelce in these crazy screens down the field and, getting Tyreek Hill and Mecole Hardman involved in jet sweeps and stuff like that. And you don't need, Patrick Mahomes to just play superhero every single game. Our teams are just going to drop into a deep zone and say, beat us with all your go routes. It's not going to work. So I really love what they did on Monday night in terms of simplifying the offense. Clyde Edwards-Helaire looked like a guy who was thinking he's about to get replaced when Le'Veon Bell comes in, and he had a monster game against the Bills rushing the ball. But, I love how Andy Reid, how versatile this offense can be. Their defense really came along, limiting Josh Allen and the Bills to only 16 points on Monday. So they're starting to really come around after Super Bowl. It's going to be tough for any team, of course, but the best team in the AFC is probably the Chiefs. But let's just they have the experience, they have the quarterback. So if they can get this running game going with Le'Veon Bell coming into town, their offensive line looks dominant. That's a team that I could really move up. But besides that, I feel pretty confident about my top 5.
Yeah, no, touching back on the Chiefs, like you're saying, they did exactly what we said they should do. You don't need to go for the 60-yard bomb to Tyreek Hill every single time. Get the ground game going a little bit, and then, it might have to do a little bit with the weather. If it's raining, you really don't want to throw the ball that far. So maybe they just ran it just because it was raining. But I think credit to Andy Reid, he did what he had to do to, make some adjustments on the offensive side. And the Chiefs going forward, their schedule, I don't think it's anything too crazy. So maybe they will reclaim their throne at the top of the AFC. Right now, the Pittsburgh Steelers, I do have them over the Tennessee Titans just because of their ability to get pressure on the quarterback. Like you were saying, even though the Titans brought in Jadeveon Clowney, they don't have the TJ Watt type of guy or Cam Hayward type of guy who can go out there and put some pressure on the quarterback like they just did to Baker Mayfield last Sunday. So that's why I have the Steelers just, 2 spots ahead of the Titans.
All right, so that will wrap up our top 5s. Real quick, are there any teams on the bubble of a top 5 that you think could maybe jump in after last week's performance and maybe looking forward they could have some positive movement?
Well, the Buccaneers, they had a great game against the Packers. The Packers dropped out of our top five. Also, the Bills, back-to-back losses for them. But if they can get back on their saddle, Josh Allen going back into the MVP race, maybe they can, sneak back in. And then, maybe the Bears. The Bears, I was dogging on them a whole bunch, but if they keep on playing as well as they have been, maybe they can eke into this, 4 or 5 spot later on to the season.
And the other side of that Monday night game, if the Rams can have a statement win and prove that last week was a fluke, they could make some movement upward as well. So there's a lot of teams that have promise. My Saints, they still need a bigger win on their schedule. Playing the Panthers this week is not going to do much for you. But anyway, let's move on to Thursday night football to wrap up the pod. We have the New York Football Giants on the road to face the Eagles. Philadelphia is favored by 4.5 in this game. I'll start with this one. Really, even though the Giants won that last week and the Eagles lost, I think the team that looks best going into this week is the Eagles because they almost won against a really good
Well,
Ravens
they
team.
almost went into overtime. I'm not going to say won, but they almost
Okay,
went to
they
overtime.
made it competitive against a far superior, talented Baltimore Ravens team, which they had no business being in that game. As it was my lock of the week, and I was terrified watching that game late. But thank you, Doug Peterson, for choking. But that's not going to be the case in this game. It was a really good win for the Giants. Woohoo, you beat the football team. Now, that was a game that we were both, waiting to watch all week. Giants football team. I think Carson Wentz is finally starting to get a rhythm this season. It seems like he's found his number one receiver, number one guy in Travis Fulgham, to really help him out in the absence of a lot of these big receivers. Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey are both questionable for this game. Big concern though, Miles Sanders is going to be out for this game, so that's going to really hurt the running game for the Eagles. So guess what, Carson Wentz? This is a game, if you want to have a chance making the playoffs, Cowboys just lost against the Cardinals. Win this game. You're the top of the NFC East. It's all up to you now. Get it done, Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I have to agree. This is all going to be on Carson Wentz once again. Even more key players missing out. I believe Zach Ertz has been put onto the IR, and he will miss around 3 to 4 weeks. So Carson Wentz, if you can, stay in against his Giants team, who we know, Daniel Jones, he's turnover prone. Just Carson Wentz, don't make any mistakes. Don't have any turnovers like you've had every single game this season. Wait for Daniel Jones to turn it over, get some nice field positioning, and just get a nice lead on this Giants team and show why you deserve to win this NFC least division.
Yeah, but for the line and the situation, you know what? I think.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
I didn't know about Zach Ertz. I did not know about Zach Ertz. And I'm
No,
looking up
Richard Rodgers, he is going to be a great replacement for Zach Ertz.
who?
Richard Rodgers.
Oh, the guy who used to play with Green Bay, and that's the only thing you know about him.
No, he had that one Hail Mary catch against the Lions, remember?
Yeah, he used to play for Green Bay. And it was Rodgers to Rodgers connection. It was the big thing for like a half a year. Just looking at the games next week. Nope. Philadelphia needs this game. I think all the pressure's there. I think their defense is going to show up and show out like they did against the 49ers. You need to get those defensive touchdowns, though. The offense is really going to struggle. Dallas's defense isn't great, but we saw a good performance last week. I saw some guys really step up. A defensive touchdown on their side of the ball, so that's promising for them. But no, I think Philly wins this one. I'm going to go 19-16. Philadelphia wins this one, low scoring.
Ooh, I do believe, the Giants, James Bradbury, he's been playing very well all season. He held up Mark Cooper to only 2 or 3 catches. Terry McLaurin did all right against him. So, I mean, the Giants, they've allowed the least amount of points scored, out of this whole division. So their defense is a little bit, or excuse me, no, I believe it is the Eagles. I don't know, whichever one, but the Giants have allowed the 8th fewest running back points in fantasy. So don't start Boston Scott if you have him, unless you really need to. But I think Carson Wentz gets it done despite all the key pieces that he's missing. But it's going to be a tight one, divisional game or short week as well. But I'll take the Eagles 21-17.
Just for your information, the Eagles have let up 175 points this season. The Giants have let up 152 points. So, in terms of points allowed, the Giants have the upper advantage, but they've also scored 40 less points than the Eagles this season. So, that's the reason why they only have one win. But yeah, that'll wrap it up for the podcast. We'll film again tomorrow for our predictions for the rest of the games for week 7. Any closing remarks, Laraib?
Yes. If you text me if you send a picture of Richard Rodgers, screenshot of Richard Rodgers to any one of our social media accounts, or you text it to me, I will send you $8 on Venmo.
Like he said, Richard Rodgers, former Rodgers to Rodgers that we used to see. Text it to me or Laraib or any of our social medias, and that will get it done. Any closing remarks, Laraib, besides that?
All our social medias will be linked down in the description below, so go ahead, check them out.
Follow up.
Yeah, follow us on there. And besides that, have a great rest of your day.
Peace out.